Hi everyone, this is Peter, and I'm recording a short video on the topic of Mannerism. Mannerism is an art style that emerges in Italy after about 1520 or so, primarily centering on the city of Florence, but soon a style that makes itself felt really all across Europe. It becomes a kind of equivalent almost to this international Gothic style that was predominant in Europe through the 14th century. We're looking at a painting by an artist known as Parmigianino, who is part of a circle of Mannerists that are going to make their names felt. The influence felt. Another important one is going to be Pontormo, and another one, Bronzino. Parmigianino's painting, which is done when he's about 31, gives a really good illustration of a number of the important characteristics of this artistic style. A good way to begin the discussion is to focus on the origins of the term Mannerism, which comes from the Italian word maniera, M-A-N-I-E-R-A. And maniera basically, in terms of its translation, means a kind of hand or a style. And the way to think about Mannerism in a lot of ways really is the stylish style, the self-consciously artificial style. It's a style that builds in some regards on the ideas of Michelangelo, whom, if we recall, focused especially on the sort of individual efforts and ideas and even genius, at least as Vasari saw, of the artist in creating a work that was not dependent upon nature per se, but indeed an expression of an idea that the artist had. And there's a certain degree to which Michelangelo gives, as it were, license to artists to depart from the systems of proportion or other rules that had developed in 15th century Italian art. Parmigianino shows already a sort of real willingness to dispense with those rules in his representation of what has been up until now a very kind of conservative subject, which is to say the Virgin Mary with the Christ child. We'll walk through really quickly what some of these significant departures are. Just for starters, the dimensions of the Virgin Mary are extraordinarily attenuated and elongated, and her proportions, particularly if we talk about the eponymous neck that the painting's traditional title, is based upon. Her head is quite small in relation to the rest of her body. Her right hand has almost impossibly elongated and attenuated fingers, so perhaps a reflection of the word maniera. The garments that she wears, this sort of blue mantle, none of these hang in the normal kind of sober and somewhat concealing fashion that's typical for representations of the Virgin Mary. Instead, they cling kind of like a plastic wrap or Teflon to her body, and perhaps emphasize a little too much that body beneath the garments. The Christ child is certainly not a traditional age, nor posed in traditional sense, and probably self-consciously is emulating Michelangelo's Pietà that's present in Rome as an example to artists such as Parmigianino. To the Virgin's right is this peculiar clustering perhaps of angels. We're really not entirely clear. Ambiguity along with that self-conscious artificiality is certainly a feature of Mannerist art, and the same proportions can be found in the figures that are located clustered around the Virgin Mary to her right. In the background we see a very enigmatic character indeed, in a sort of quasi-classical pose, unrolling a scroll in a kind of, again, self-consciously extravagant and elegant position with no clear relationship between foreground and background, and he in turn is accompanied by an obvious kind of visual architectural metaphor, that long neck, the column of the Virgin Mary, which had been a staple of Marian sort of symbolism for really many hundreds of years, but here carries a sort of quizzical and ambiguous aspect to it. The overall effect, again, is extraordinarily precise and polished and elegant and fashionable, but lacks that solidity and harmonious sort of classical aspect that we might associate with an artist such as Masaccio, or more contemporary to this, Raphael. So I hope this gives a sense, again, of the characteristics of Mannerism. In terms of form, elongated and attenuated and somewhat contrived poses and body parts, oftentimes ambiguity in terms of intention, meaning, or subject matter, with a focus throughout on artistic virtuosity and individuality.